I've fired a lot of bullets, especially steel-cased ammunition. I've especially shot a lot of machine guns in my life. And when I have to deal with something like a stuck case and I don't have a ready means to actually unstick that case, it turns itself into a real issue. And dude, we don't even really have to talk about threat to life type stuff. We could just talk about things like classes or just regular training time. So I wanted to take a moment to mention today's sponsor, One-Off, and their new OS tool. The OS tool is a combination stuck case extractor and strap cutter with its own little Kydex sheath that can either be whipped in a bag or strapped in via molly. It's real light, has a replaceable blade, and the extractor itself is made out of black nitride coated steel in a CNC machined anodized 6061 aluminum handle. Now, seatbelt cutters aren't ever really needed until they're really needed, and the extractor tool itself is really useful to have in case you end up with a stuck case due to fouling, debris, or in the case of like ARs with steel-cased ammunition, a combination of those things, as well as the fact that the case just didn't contract in time and the extractor on the bolt just rips the case rim free. So if you're under pressure, in the case of especially like machine gun crews and things like that, or if you just don't have a way to get the case free, it's easy enough to pull the tool from the sheath, come in on the left-hand side of the case rim when it's still in your chamber area and rip the thing free. It's a simple but useful tool with a solid value. I've linked to One-Off's product page in the description below where you can learn more to pick one up, because frankly I love this little guy. I love the fact that they made this, and I want to thank them for sponsoring this. Now let's get back to our video. Alright, so the Beretta 92 GTS. Since the 92 FS came out, a lot of people have been asking for a frame-mounted decocker or safety or both. And while Taurus decided that they were going to go ahead and do that forever ago, and I guess they still make the gun now, Beretta really opted to not do that until fairly recently at least. Now, scanning the interwebs, I noticed that there's a whole lot of stuff out there that's like first impressions, tabletop stuff, very low round count deals. And when you make a rather large design change, that could actually screw up a whole lot of stuff related to the gun itself. So I decided to pick one up, run it through its paces, and do a 7,000 round review. Now, yeah, you heard and you read right. It's 7, not 6, which is my standard, and the reason for that is fairly straightforward. Aside of a little bit of first-person view time with an RMR HD, the vast majority of the film that I have on this particular gun is while Trash House optics are riding atop of it. And frankly, I wasn't going to disgrace this handgun with a $15 optic that cost someone $200+. So I deliberately bought 1,000 rounds and attached a decent optic to this thing so that my demo footage wouldn't be disgraced for the next foreseeable future, because a 6,000 round review with a whole bunch of nonsense on top of that gun is just something that doesn't jive well with me. Now, before we actually get to the major change, and that would be the G-style twin sear with the frame-mounted decocker on board, it's worth it to mention what is compatible with regular M92F stuff, because I am a person that likes to tailor my guns a little bit more to my individual preferences, so it's worth it to mention those things here. The first and foremost is that there isn't a rotating firing pin block like there is on a regular 92 style gun, but all the other slide internals are the same. So if you have to replace parts, barrels, and all that stuff, you can do that. In addition to this, you can go ahead and run a search on the compatibility of the lower parts, but aside of the twin sear mechanism itself, for rather obvious reasons, and the grip panels, because the levers themselves are actually kind of large and the grip panels have to go around said lever, there's actually a lot of compatibility in your frame as well, like hammer springs, trigger bars, trigger shoes, takedown lever, and things like that. The funny thing is that with the drastic change, proportionally speaking, there's actually a lot of compatibility with the frame to other 92F style guns, so I count that as rather fortunate that it isn't all that crazy as far as a lot of different replacement parts are concerned. In addition, the twin sear nature of this frame means that once the gun comes out of the holster, for instance, you've already loaded it, decocked it, holstered it up, and that sort of deal, it only ever decocks into half cock rather than a full hammer down. Now, as far as the shooting part is concerned, I actually really do appreciate that, and I actually prefer it. A lot of you have seen me do this with the M9A4 and the Langdon Tactical 92, where you'll watch me bring it to half cock on purpose, or decock it and then bring it back to half cock or whatever. Thing is, though, is that as far as dropping the hammer is concerned, unless you press the trigger and ride the hammer down, it's only ever going to decock into the half cock position. Now, for circumstance-based stuff, I actually actually don't prefer this, primarily because if it's not in a concealed capacity, and I've shot this GTS as well as the other two Berettas you guys have seen me shoot concealed a whole bunch, and with regards to that, or if it's laying on a desk or whatever, I'm just going to prefer to keep it in half cock. However, the second that I put this on a gun belt, I personally prefer to just have the hammer down all the way. And all this really is just a little bit of layer of extra seal, because dust and whatnot getting onto the barrel slash slide area isn't really concerning. I've seen a lot of military M9s and 92 style guns in general just sort of fight that off. But what no gun does well is have a bunch of junk inside of its frame where all of its trigger working stuff goes. Now, is this a big issue? No. Is this a big detail that a lot of people miss? Yes. But like I said, the small details are really where a lot of people draw their preferences on this sort of thing. So while I wouldn't just immediately throw this all the way out as far as a duty capacity is concerned, it does actually give me a little bit of pause. And if I have an M9A4 or a regular 92 style gun with a G style decocker, meaning if they're sitting right next to each other and I gotta use one in a gun belt capacity right now, I'm actually gonna select the more traditional option, and that's only because of that small detail. Now, again, that may mean nothing to you individually, but it is just something that I personally noticed. Because if stuff gets into the trigger guts of a Glock, it's gonna stop. So providing that extra route for stuff to get into, I know I'm starting to sound really GWAT-y, but there is some validity there in that I go to some really dusty places sometimes, and having the extra nonsense get into my frame, if I have to whip myself into the dirt a whole lot, is not exactly a desirable outcome. Now, could you just thumb down the hammer yourself? Yeah, sure, you totally could, but I'm not really going to count on that when my blood's pumping real fast. So again, small detail. For some of you, that's not going to bother you at all. We're really talking about personal preferences here. Next, and again, small detail, but this thing ships with grips that would be okay if I didn't have the 92X style straight frame. Now, and I've shot a lot of single stack 1911s, particularly in 45, so this shouldn't bother me, but I guess it's just a weight distribution thing here, because handling a 92 with a straight grip angle on it just feels really, really small and unbalanced for me, and I immediately hated it. And there isn't a wraparound set of grips that actually ships with the gun, so now I gotta go get a set, which sort of sucks. I actually really do like the M9A4 wraparound grips. There's just something about it. It just doesn't feel all the way like hard plastic, almost like there's a little bit of give in there. And if they made a wraparound style for this particular gun, I would just have those on it. But instead, I went to lock grips, and I had a set made for me so that I had a little bit of that extra grip angle in there, so it felt like a regular 92. And yeah, problem solved, problem stay solved there. Again, your mileage may vary on just how your friggin' hand and wrist and all that stuff is constructed, but I really hate the straight grip angle on 92 style guns. Some of you could disagree with me. That's totally fine. I've seen guys rock the house with either. So as far as I'm concerned, get what you like and go from there. Next, just like the 92X, we have the M9A3 style trigger guard in there, which again, for those of you that don't know, that was actually a request from the Marine Corps way back when, because the older style M9 trigger guard was not quite as tough, and they asked Beretta to really beef the front end of that trigger guard up so it could help them enforce compliance. That's like a direct quote from the request, which is hilarious. And that stays here too. As far as functionality is concerned, I don't need that too terribly much, but its inclusion is neat. Rail dust cover, just like again an M9A4 or a 92X. Front and rear slide serrations do exactly what they're supposed to do, which now for the rear slide serrations, there's a little more room there, but we're going to talk more on that. The stock set of sights on it is a blacked out rear with a fiber optic front, and I ejected my fiber optic front cable forever ago, but that's not really a knock on the sighting system. That's just me not paying attention. Fiber optic cables try to wiggle themselves out regardless to how much you pay as much attention as possible to them. So I didn't look. It started to loosen up, and during one of the I don't know how many reps, it just yeeted itself off the front sight post. Also, fun fact, speaking of front sight posts, and I looked at the M9A4 that was lent to me too, just to make sure, but it would seem that Beretta actually agrees with me as far as staking front sights into place, because hey, looky there, a stake. Guess what I also didn't lose? My front sight. Weird. And of course, the trigger in it is identical in weight, feel, and press compared to an M9A4, which, like I've said previously, is indeed behind a Langdon 92 Elite with all the trigger job and a bag stuff that they do their guns. That said, just like the M9A4 video, it's not that much of a difference, at least to me, and especially at speed. Because everybody has great moments with the guns that they're using, everyone has dog water moments with the guns that they're using, and the number of dog water moments that I had with this gun did not increase by any noticeable margin whatsoever. And while I'm sure that there is a performance difference that's there. It's just not all that big of a deal to me, especially when a Volker straight angle shoe is installed. Which, by the way, going back to the compatibility stuff, the straight angle shoe that is in this gun came out of the 92 Elite, so the compatibility is definitely there. But now that we've gone through a feature set, I'm gonna rope up the decocking lever itself into the performance section because it does require quite a bit of talking about if you're the kind of person that likes to have the little details when you're trying to decide between the million different variants of this gun. Now, as far as reliability is concerned, a bunch of you guys basically called this out, either basically or literally, by saying, let me guess, a Beretta, you rate this a boring out of 10. And that's true. As far as the 7,000 rounds is concerned, I had 2 failures to fire. They were both dead primers. And just in case, I loaded them back up, and yep, the primers were super dead. So I count that as a friggin' nothing burger as far as stoppages go. I mean, because honestly, as far as overall design emphasis is concerned, and as far as reliable actions are concerned, Berettas are really high up there as far as reliable guns are. E-port, massive, fire control is super proven. Yeah, we got it. It's a reliable pistol. Hooray. That said, though, and the big ticket item here is actually the decocking lever itself. Now, there's more than a few, and really more than a bunch of folks that actually have said to me and elsewhere that the particular size and shape of this lever is actually a source of frustration because it hotspots the shit out of a lot of folks. You know, and I get that. Everyone has different size hands. Some controls are going to bother guys a lot, and some controls are not going to bother people. In my particular case, I have making trees talk and digging tunnels written into my very DNA, so the width of my little digits are not exactly huge, but the Irish in me gives me medium length gloves, so there's always like a medium size glove that I actually need. As far as I'm concerned, I am not really terribly affected by it, and I say terribly because what I basically equate this to, at least for me and what I feel and what starts to smart a little bit, is essentially when I have to run 1911s a lot. Pinning down that safety lever eventually starts to wear on you a little bit, and it starts to make that digit a little bit weaker. You can feel a little hotspot on it, whatever. And as far as this is concerned, it feels basically exactly the same for me. In that if I got a real long range day coming, I am gonna feel this thumb at some point, but I don't take that as anything egregious or abnormal, especially seeing as the lever itself is something that I physically press on, just like a 1911, to help leverage the gun a little bit in my favor, one or two-handed. Where this starts to make me feel like I got little bitch hands is when I have to decock the thing when I am a long ways into a very long day. And that sometimes I guess I catch it just right and it decocks no problem and whatever. Sometimes I just do not have leverage anymore, and I guess I'm just tired and I gotta come over and decock it with the other friggin' hand or hang onto the pistol while I do it. And yeah, all this is a symptom of is I got tiny man hands and there's not a whole lot of space between my bones and my skin, so I understand why it would wear on me a bit. That said, on a traditional 92, I straight up just do not have this issue at all. It catches the thumb just right, it's a downward motion instead of an upward motion, and I've never felt any sort of fatigue from that whatsoever. So in the arena of decocking the gun with a sense of urgency because I gotta get a rifle up or something, I'm actually gonna knock it just a little bit because of that very specific instance. And for some people, it's a non-factor completely, and for others, it's significantly worse. So I would highly suggest if you're on the fence to just grab one in a gun shop, or if you're able, shoot one a little bit before you're able to pick one up, because that's one of those things that's going to feel different depending on who you are. That said, for my part, if you're the kind of person that needs a medium glove or whatever, it's really not that big of a deal at all, and I only really start to really feel this past the 1,000 round mark on an extended day. So if your hands are constructed similarly to mine, unless your skin and bones are made out of exclusively crying little bitch tears material, you should be just fine. What is interesting though about this particular lever is that one of the main reasons why people wanted a frame mounted lever for this entire series of handgun in general is I would like a little bit more space if I got a jack to slide. You know, the military M9s, there was a concern, although it was really hard to actually do if you were even remotely competent and didn't have the attention span of a goldfish, but it was actually possible to where if you came over the top and jacked the slide, you could turn the safety on and decock the gun all at the same time. Now, is that a big deal? No, just wrap your friggin' digits up underneath that lever, jack to slide, and you're good. But the other half of this this is just to give people more room to actually grab onto the slide and run it. And I will say, because of the shape of the lever, if you don't have an optic on top of this thing and you just go to run the slide, you really don't have any extra space at all. That said, the potential risk maybe, I guess not really, of running the slide and decocking the gun at the same time just isn't there, so you're gonna have to figure out what your preference is on that individually. That said, I will say on modern iterations of either type of handgun, meaning if there's a friggin' optic on top of it, there's a whole RDS sitting in the palm of my hand, and I'm just kind of grabbing the slide serrations and moving the entire unit to the rear anyway, so the whole need for more space or possibility of risk of touching off a friggin' G lever or whatever is just not there the second that an optic is there. Like me personally, I don't actually try to just run the slide by using the optic itself unless I'm one-handed, because I'd rather not. But either way, first-hand experience with either gun, the second that there's an optic mounted, none of this matters in the first place. And if there isn't an optic mounted, yeah, I will say that that possibility is completely removed. It just seems to be that you don't have like extra room to grab stuff as far as the slide is concerned, so you know, you're just dealing with it there because the slide profile itself is fairly small. But other than that, dude, really it's just a 92X with a different profile of decocker on it, honestly. It's boringly reliable, trigger's fine, recoil impulse is fine, but you know what, I'll take the time to answer this question as well, because some people are like, hey, if you're gonna do a build that's like ideal for you, would you pick this, would you pick the Centurion, and that sort of stuff. I will say straight out the box, the difference in like recoil impulse and stuff between a full-size gun and a GTX is virtually zero. Like as far as overall feel, they're basically exactly the same, at least to my hands. Like, yeah, there's the tiniest little difference in there, but it's not enough to note, and really not enough to notice unless you go back to back, like shoot the full size and then the Centurion is like, okay, this one snaps just the tiniest bit more. That said, if I was being asked what type of ultimate build I could do with the double single action guns, what I would say is that either it's a GTS or a regular 92 type series or 92X or whatever it is that you want. Tailor your controls, grips, do whatever it is that you want to. But if you were thinking about the compensated route, that's when you get a threaded barrel and a Centurion sized one of these, because then the length of the comp doesn't overshoot like an X300 or something. If instead you're trying to port or do none of those things, I would just say to get the slightly longer gun, mostly because if you got a light attached, or at least a good one anyway, it's going to overshoot the barrel in the first place, A, and B, yeah, I know, there really is not that much difference between a 4.75 barrel and a 4.25 barrel, but if I'm not going to port or compensate and I want to beat the brakes off of one, I'm probably going to go with the very slightly longer pistol in the first place. For no other reason than they perform basically identically and the slightly longer gun looks better to me. Oh, and also for those that don't know, the barrels are cold hammer forged and there is a mild target crown actually put on the barrel so it protects itself if it takes a spill into stuff. Oh, and also I got the D-La plate, like the medium width one, primarily because with the slightly taller one I can mount all the RMR footprint stuff to it. And I gotta tell ya, I'm glad that the plate is very slightly thinner than the factory one, and I mean very slightly thinner. So slightly thinner that people that were really pushing this on me should be ashamed of themselves, because there's a difference in a plate overhanging a slide and the contact points between the slide itself and the plate. But the real reason that I'm glad that it's just a little bit shorter than the factory plate is A, the D-La plate comes with Torx bit screws rather than hex head, and that's like a really big deal to me personally, because I have a fantastic habit of stripping the shit out of hex heads, especially when they're like small and I use stuff like Loctite to hold them in place. That might not be an issue for you, maybe I just suck with tiny screws, but as far as that stuff is concerned, I just prefer the Torx bit heads. And the extra tiny bit of shortness that I get out of the D-La plate means that I can also get a suppressor height sights from also D-La, because they take a stock set and they modify them so that all this stuff mashes together. Because for some ungodly reason, unless you buy the single action only tacticals specifically from Beretta, they just don't make suppressor height sights for optics, which is the dumbest thing ever. So instead, I have to wait an inordinate amount of time before I get a damn email from D-La that's like, we have a set of sights that 30 people can fight over to buy. But that said, once I have a set of suppressor heights on the gun, the build's basically done. So there's the performance differences, reliability testing, and all of that stuff. But really quickly before we end this video, let's go ahead and talk about, besides the fact that it's different, why did I really buy this gun? Now, the real reason, honestly, why I bought this is, frankly, I was so annoyed, at least initially, at the Langdon Tactical 92, that I started to really look into what actually matters to me, and what I decided more than anything else is, you know, I could probably just straight up get a stock 92 RDO, get all of the shit that I want in it, come out way cheaper in the end, and suffer no performance loss. And granted, while we are still in the early stages of this, I'll have you guys come back and see me at 24,000 rounds, because I've more or less decided that that's basically like the next stage of the review process. Like the initial is 6,000 and the long term is at 24. And obviously how I'm going to get there with the different guns I have in the house is I'm just going to start rotating them as test bed equipment until I get to that count. And then we can talk about stuff that I replaced, like springs and shit like that anyway. But even though we're in the initial stages, it's the first 7,000 rounds, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, take this with a very large grain of salt, but at the very least in this initial stage, this first 7,000 rounds, that objective was basically achieved, in that I could just get a stock 92X, or in this particular case a GTX, put the stuff I want in it myself, and still come out way cheaper than a gun that has sights and plates and shit like that falling off of it. Because, by the way, since I produced those videos, a lot of people have reached out to me just to say, yeah, I just got this thing, and from the shop, the front sight's way off. It was so off that I thought that my optics sucked, and I sent that optic back to get a brand new Holosun 507 comp, and then figure out, oh shit, it's actually the front iron sight, or front sights are ejecting for people, or the optic plates are coming loose, and there's like more than a dozen people. And it's basically one of two different stories where it's either, yeah, I just got this and I experienced the same shit that you did as far as stuff coming off the gun, or they say, yeah, I picked one up 2-3 years ago or whatever and the same shit was happening. So my first thought, of course, is, well, why don't I just like do this shit myself and I don't have to worry about any of that nonsense? And yeah, it turns out you can, because look, you don't even have to do all the stuff that I did based on your personal preferences or whatever. But as far as the overall cost goes, like the gun itself was like $825, $850, somewhere in there. The Volker straight trigger shoe is 100 and change, I believe, like 120 something. And I'm just going off the top of my head, but the lock grips are in very similar price range too. And all you have to do is think about that for 3 seconds, because then you add on the D-Law plate and you're like, wow, it's when you talk about the difference between this thing assembled at present and then you go to Langdon and get their stuff, like once it actually arrives in your hand, you came out ahead by like a ways as far as money goes. And as far as me personally, like performance loss wise, like yeah, I notice there's a difference in the trigger, sure, but it's like the difference between your aftermarket Glock trigger is slightly nicer than my aftermarket Glock trigger, because a 92X pattern trigger is 1,000 times better than a stock 92 FS. So when the differences are that small, I don't really suffer that much of a performance loss. So in that regard, yeah, I came out way ahead price-wise, and again, I still have things to do, and again, come see me in 24,000 rounds when we've changed out parts because I killed springs or whatever, and then we can talk about that when we get there. And of course, I didn't have a front sight fall off the gun, because guess what? It was friggin' staked on there. Like, you see the stake on the front sight post. It's on both this and the damn M9A4, which coincidentally didn't come off the damn gun either. You know, and some people are gonna do more stuff than I did, some people are gonna do less, but if you start pricing it out yourself, under a large number of different sets of circumstances, you still come out ahead regardless. So that was more or less the objective. It's like, if I was unhappy with this to start, why don't I just use my own little hands and put one together and see how different it really is? And turns out, it's not that much damn different. But hey, it is what it is. For those of you that were asking for this review because you wanted those little details, there you go. I hope I helped, because a lot of people have been asking me what I think about this gun, and I kept having to push them off and tell them, you just wait for the friggin' review, and here it is. But either way, it's outro time. If you'd like to come out and train with us, you can absolutely do that. We still have a couple of classes for this year on the website right now. And fun fact, I had a last second drop, so if anyone wants to attend Advanced Pistol, which I've been very excited to put on because it's real hard, come out to Mississippi and hang out with us. And for those of you that want to be turbo miserable, I'm doing a class in December in Ohio. That's going to be super duper fun. It's not, and I'm so friggin' excited, because whipping myself and a bunch of dudes into the cold on the ground is going to be the best thing ever. But as far as additional classes are concerned, we're going to have the complete following year up and ready to go by Black Friday, so you can take advantage of that. If you want to support us through Patreon, you can absolutely do that too, because yeah, while I take a sponsor every once in a while, I am by and large funded by viewers like you. So if you want to throw a couple of bucks at us just to help us out, that'd be great. If you want to get something out of it, for $41 a month gets you as much open enrollment training as you like, unless it is a logistically challenging course like something revolving around a soft skin vehicle class or something like that for pretty obvious reasons, and we don't extend the $41 a month thing for private classes for really obvious reasons. Also, if you're a school teacher or a school resource officer and you carry a gun anyway, I train you for free forever. If you are interested in that sort of thing, I just need to do a little bit of credentials checking. Do not worry, I am not contacting your employer. And this thing that I've encountered with lots of folks when I'm like, yeah, I'll train you for free forever. No, for real, like I'm not charging you tuition. If there's a range fee, that's them, not me. I don't need tuition from you, dude. For some reason, there's always guys that like feel bad about this, especially after their first 3-day set, and it's like, listen, if you feel guilty, bring me a student. Otherwise, I'm not gonna push you on it because I'm a dad. It's as simple as that, man. Also, if you want to check out our social media stuff, all the links for that stuff are in the description below, including our new Discord, and including the new Dorkified Gaming channel that I'm putting up. And also, I'm not making a switch, but I am just opening up another pathway here. I'm also on Rumble, so for those that care, I'm over there, in addition to being right here. Because while I really doubt it, there's always a possibility that all the gun channels on a Google run website get nuked, so it would probably be smart if I had a big old backlog of stuff that I have someplace else. So there we are. That said, after all the plugs, if and only if you found this entertaining / helpful, you can click a like, click a subscribe, hit the little notification bell, and set it to all, because that's the real subscribe button anyway. And remember, guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.